Brought to you by Charity Mobile, the phone company that supports life and family. 5% of your monthly plan price goes to your favorite charity. Buy the way you believe at CharityMobile.com and use promo code TRADITION.
There's a lot of speculation going on among traditionally minded Catholics that the Holy Father, Pope Leo XIV, will roll back Traditionis Custodes. If you don't remember what that document is, it was a document promulgated by Pope Francis, authored by Cardinal Arthur Roche, a English cardinal who hates the traditional Mass, the same Mass that developed from apostolic times naturally and was the normative Mass in the Latin West until 1964 or so. It suppressed it, essentially, pushing it to the boundaries of dioceses that any diocese, any bishop who wanted it still there would have. Even the ones who wanted it couldn't keep it in large numbers. And what it did, the effect of that had on the church was in America, Canada, Western Europe, and any other place where you could still easily find the traditional Mass, the numbers attending those Masses exploded. And not just because people were having to consolidate into smaller parishes and fall farther away places, but this made people more interested in it. After all, Pope Francis, who was not as popular as they made you believe he was, if he was against it, this had to be something interesting. And now we're seeing large numbers of conversions in conservative and traditionally minded parishes. And I guess someone who goes to a Latin Mass exclusively, I can tell you, you'll be hard-pressed often to find a place to sit in some of these masses now. These masses explode at the seams at every offering at these parishes. But there is now talk among some traditional Catholics that the Holy Father will rescind Traditionis Custodes, and if not rescind, at least will loosen the restrictions on it, allowing for more traditional Mass offerings in dioceses. I don't actually think that's going to happen, and if it does, it won't be soon, I don't think. And I would love to be wrong on that. And if I am wrong, I'll retract that statement in the future. He's got other things he has to worry about. But the war on the traditional Mass continues. And I've got an interesting story for you here. Last week, this story started to make the rounds. There was a bishop and a priest involved in this story who were extremely hostile to the traditional Mass, and they looked for any excuse to get rid of one of the most popular ones in the diocese. And what ended up happening was, well, in the long run, the traditionalists stopped going to that parish, and that parish withered away and collapsed. I'm not shocked by this, if having seen the numbers and the tithing that happens at traditional parishes. Go here to Rarate Cheli for this headline: Better Destruction Than Devotion. Indiana Novus Ordo Parish kicks out Latin Mass community, gets closed by bishop several years later. An Indiana parish that ran to the National Catholic Reporter to stir up animosity against the Latin Mass community found out this week it will be closed due to lack of vitality. Well, they got what they wanted. They got the most vibrant portion of their parish kicked out of their parish. And what ended up happening? Parish collapsed. It left the bishop in a position where he had to close the parish. There's another facet to these stories. And it is simply this. The average age at your typical parish is in like the age 50s, right? In the 50, 60 years old. That is a typical age of the person attending Mass at your typical neighborhood parish. At the typical traditional Mass parish, the average age is about 30. Lots of married couples with young children. The word vitality is a good way to describe the state of those parishes. And what ends up happening is if you kick those parishes or you kick those Masses out, you kick the communities out. The people don't stick around. They will drive the hour and a half, the 2 hours, the 2.5 hours, the 3 hours each way to get to a traditional Mass, whether that's with the FSSP or the SSPX or the Institute of Christ the King or whatever it is. Diocesan even. I've encountered people who drove 4 hours to get to a diocesan TLM. And those parishes thrive. And in this case, it's not that surprising that this parish was closed inevitably by the bishop, because the hostility there it has, I think, more to do not just with the form of the liturgy itself, but also the vitality itself. There's a certain way we do things around here, and you're not going to disrupt it, and you're not going to change it, even in the long term, after those of us who dominate this parish now are long since gone. It's kind of the attitude you see in a lot of places. It's a very unfortunate one. When we talk about synodal dialogue in the church these days, have a lot of that happening at these parishes that have mixed mass offerings. Here are the details from the article. Quote, on Sunday, the parish officially announced it would be closing sometime in 2026, following a series of discussions with other churches in the area over how to address demographic changes and a declining number of priests. Yet things could have gone so differently. St. Joseph's Church in Hammond, just across the Illinois border from where the new pope grew up in Dolton, originally was set to host an Institute of Christ the King community. Under then Bishop Donald Hying, the Institute of Christ the King sovereign priest offered Sunday and weekday masses, while the parish continued Novus Ordo masses. Photos show a goodly number of faithful attending. However, the aging community in place complained to the National Catholic Reporter and succeeded in getting a hit piece published there in 2019. The backlash led to Bishop Hying reducing the Institute of Christ the King's Mass schedule to Sundays and holy days of obligation. The Institute paid $800 in rent per week to the parish. This meant that an otherwise failing parish was suddenly receiving over $40,000 a year thanks to the TLM presence. At the end of 2022, partially due to the animosity from the parishioners, as well as the dictates of traditionis custodes, Bishop Robert McClory moved the Latin Mass to Our Lady of Czestochowa in Merrillville, where it has been ever since. Meanwhile, its one source of vitality, plucked out, St. Joe's continued to struggle as it reduced its weekend schedule to just one Sunday Mass. 2 retired priests continued to offer Mass, while an administrator oversaw several other churches. The church had no religious education, no school, and a neighboring hospital had been torn down, removing any necessity to have priests nearby. The National Catholic Reporter said the battle between the Latin Mass and Novus Ordo people was Benedict versus Pope Francis. Now, Pope Francis is dead, and so is the Novus Ordo parish. Meanwhile, the local Latin Mass community thrives. Where there is tradition, there is the faith. And where there is the faith, there is life. Let us hope and pray that Pope Leo XIV will understand this fundamental truth and act on it. End quote. And as you can see here, they include the letter signed by the bishop announcing the closure of the parish. This isn't surprising. It really isn't. When you remove the organization that is offering your parish $40,000 a year to offer just a couple of masses every week, what do you expect is going to happen? Budgets at parishes are tight. And when your demographic for your parish tends to skew towards the older, we're talking about people who generally on balance live on fixed incomes. They can't afford to tithe more than a few dollars. So the parish was not being sustainable. So, in other words, you took the vitality out of the parish. And what happens when you remove the vitality out of something? It doesn't survive. That's what happened here. They say the future, if left unchecked, if left unstopped, if just allowed to flourish, is going to be those parishes that offer either the traditional Latin Mass or the Novus Ordo in a way that is almost indistinguishable from the traditional Latin Mass, meaning very reverent, boatloads of Latin, traditional hymns, all the sappy pop rock songs gone, and generally resembling traditionally Catholic worship. Those are the future. All you have to do is look to see where the young people are going, and young people are, for whatever reason, by the grace of God, converting in large numbers to the Catholic faith. They're doing it at your most conservative parishes. If you're looking for a hopeful sign for the future, ladies and gentlemen, that's where you'll find it. Pray for that parish community. They need it. And pray for the bishop that he has the courage to do what is necessary to save that parish. Let the Institute come back. I doubt Rome is going to be strong-armed in enforcing traditionis custodes. Let me know what you think about this in the comments, please. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't. It absolutely helps. So does sharing this on social media. That helps a lot too. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.